I am a 30-year-old man, and my wife, Claire, is also 30. We met nearly a decade ago in college and have shared what I believe to be a happy and healthy marriage. Over the years, we built a life together filled with love, trust, and mutual respect. Both of us were thriving in our careers and eagerly anticipating the arrival of our first child. Everything seemed perfect. A few weeks ago, however, my perception of our seemingly idyllic life began to unravel. It all started on my 30th birthday. Claire had planned a special dinner at an upscale restaurant to celebrate. She looked radiant in a gorgeous dress, her growing baby bump adding to her glow. It filled me with pride and excitement for the future we were building. In the months leading up to this moment, we had spent countless hours discussing the nursery, choosing baby names, and envisioning our journey as new parents. Claire had even shared her desire to leave her job to become a full-time mom, a decision I wholeheartedly supported. Financially, we were stable, and this plan aligned with the vision we had for our family. However, in the days leading up to the birthday dinner, I noticed that Claire seemed unusually anxious. She brushed it off as stress from her demanding job, where her boss frequently called her in at odd hours. I trusted her completely, so I didn't question it, chalking it up to the pressures of her job and the hormonal changes of pregnancy. On the night of my birthday, the evening started beautifully. We had chosen a restaurant we hadn't visited in years, one that held sentimental value for us. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, and I felt genuinely happy. However, just as we were beginning our appetizers, an unfamiliar man approached our table. He was dressed in a suit and held a thick manila envelope. He looked directly at Claire and asked, "Are you Claire Adams?" She froze, her expression shifting to one of palpable dread. After a brief hesitation, she nodded, her voice barely audible as she confirmed her identity. The man placed the envelope on the table and said, "You've been served. You are required to appear as a witness in the divorce trial of John and Emily Saunders." Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked away. I sat there, stunned and confused, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I expected Claire to laugh it off as a mistake or misunderstanding, but instead, she remained frozen. Her eyes were wide, and her hands trembled as she stared at the envelope. The fear and unease in her expression sent a chill through me. When I urged her to open the envelope, she reluctantly complied. As she read its contents, her face turned pale. She explained that Emily Saunders, her boss's wife, had filed for divorce, citing allegations of infidelity. Emily claimed her husband had been involved with multiple women from his office, and Claire was named as one of the alleged mistresses. My mind reeled in disbelief. Claire worked for John Saunders. How could she be implicated in something so scandalous? Claire vehemently denied any wrongdoing, insisting the accusations were baseless. She claimed Emily must have included her name out of spite or as part of a misunderstanding. Her explanation, however, did little to ease my growing unease. In hindsight, certain things began to feel suspicious. Her frequent late nights at work, weekend meetings, and vague explanations now seemed to fit into a more troubling narrative. On the drive home, the silence between us was suffocating. I kept glancing at Claire, hoping for reassurance, but she stared out the window, lost in thought. In the weeks that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about the envelope and what it implied. Each time I brought up the topic, Claire dismissed it, insisting it was nothing more than a formality and that the accusations had no merit. But her avoidance only deepened my doubts. Eventually, I reached a breaking point. Unable to ignore my suspicions any longer, I decided to attend the trial. Claire had insisted on handling it alone, but her evasiveness left me with no choice. Taking a half-day off work, I went to the courthouse, determined to uncover the truth. The moment I entered the courtroom, I felt a wave of tension. Claire's expression when she saw me was a mix of shock and fear, and it spoke volumes. My heart sank as I realized that I might be on the brink of discovering something devastating. The case unfolded quickly. Emily Saunders took the stand, passionately accusing her husband of infidelity. She presented evidence gathered by a private investigator she had hired. The investigator's findings included hotel receipts, text message exchanges, and photographic evidence of John meeting with several women outside of work hours. As the evidence was laid out, the courtroom grew tense. When Claire's name was mentioned, I felt my heart stop. The investigator claimed to have seen Claire and John together on multiple occasions, including at a hotel. The implication was clear, and it was devastating. Claire avoided my gaze throughout the trial. Her earlier assurances now felt hollow, and I was left grappling with a mix of betrayal, anger, and disbelief. Was my wife, the woman I trusted implicitly, capable of such deceit? The weight of the revelations left me questioning everything about our marriage and the life we were building together. The courtroom was filled with a tense atmosphere as photographs and videos were presented, shocking everyone present. The images involved 3 women, each implicated in various indiscretions, and as the judge reviewed the evidence, it became apparent that Claire was the only one from her office involved in these matters. The other 2 women were part of the couple's broader social circle. When it came time for testimony, the mood in the room shifted dramatically. Each of the 3 women was called to the stand to speak about her relationship with Claire's boss, and as they shared their accounts, graphic details emerged, painting a picture of deceit that was incredibly difficult to face. The weight of the situation was unbearable, and the room felt heavy with emotion. Claire, sitting nearby, struggled to respond to the judge's questions. Tears streamed down her face, and it was impossible not to feel the depth of her pain. The reality of the situation, the collapse of our once thriving relationship, hit me with a force I wasn't prepared for. It was as though my entire world was crashing down on me, and I couldn't escape the overwhelming sense of betrayal. The judge pressed for further details, asking about specific events, hotel stays, times, and dates. Each confirmation from Claire was like another blow to my chest, confirming what I had feared. But nothing could prepare me for the next revelation. When the judge asked if she was the person depicted in the photographs that had been presented as evidence, Claire hesitated, her voice trembling. Slowly, with great difficulty, she admitted that she was, in fact, the person in those images. The admission shattered everything I believed about our life together. It was as if the ground beneath me had crumbled, leaving me in freefall. The worst moment came when a video was played, one that only Claire and the judge had seen beforehand. I watched in horrified silence as Claire broke down. She was unable to bear the weight of what was unfolding on screen. She sobbed uncontrollably, and as the reality of the situation hit her, she ultimately admitted that she was in the video with her boss. The judge's voice cut through the haze of disbelief and sorrow, asking Claire if she recognized herself in the images. After a long pause, she whispered a single word. Yes. That simple acknowledgement felt like a dagger to my heart. I watched her face contort in horror as she cried out my name, begging me to let her explain. Her voice was filled with desperation, but all I could feel was the deep, gnawing pain of her betrayal. At that moment, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, my legs weak with shock and adrenaline. My body felt as though it was betraying me, but I couldn't bear to listen any longer. I turned and walked out of the courtroom, the sound of Claire's sobs fading behind me as I pushed through the doors into the cool, quiet air outside. In the weeks that followed, I isolated myself from Claire. I stayed with friends and family, needing space to think, to process everything that had happened. I couldn't face her. The pain of her infidelity consumed me, and it was as though I was trapped in a fog of confusion and anger. She begged for a chance to explain, but I couldn't bring myself to even look at her. One night, I awoke in a cold sweat, consumed with questions about the baby she was carrying. Was the affair ongoing before or after she became pregnant? And worst of all, was the child even mine? I couldn't live with the uncertainty, so I confronted Claire, demanding a prenatal DNA test. She resisted at first, but when I suggested I might consider staying if the child turned out to be mine, she reluctantly agreed. Weeks passed before I finally sat at the kitchen table, trembling as I opened the sealed envelope containing the test results. My heart sank as I read the words. The probability of paternity is 0%. A cold, numb silence enveloped me as the reality of the situation set in. The baby I had imagined raising, the family I had dreamed of, none of it was mine. It was as though I had been living a nightmare, and now it had become all too real. With a heavy heart, I drove back to the house I had shared with Claire. She was sitting on the bed, her eyes red and swollen from crying. When she looked up at me, I could see a flicker of hope in her gaze, as though she thought that maybe there was a chance for reconciliation. But without a word, I tossed the paternity test results onto the bed. My voice was flat, devoid of emotion, as I said simply, "It's not mine." Her face crumpled, and she buried her head in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. She reached out for me, but I took a step back, shaking my head. "No, Claire, it's too late. You lied to me. You betrayed me. You expect me to forgive you and raise another man's child." Her cries intensified, but I could no longer bring myself to comfort her. I turned away and said, "I'm divorcing you." The finality of my words hung in the air, heavier than anything I had ever said before. I can't live with this anymore. I walked out of the room, but as soon as I was outside, I broke down for the first time in weeks. I cried uncontrollably, the full weight of the situation crashing over me. Claire's betrayal had destroyed everything: the love, the trust, the future we had built together. The divorce itself was straightforward. After Claire's affair became public, her boss's wife's lawyer reached out to me, offering incriminating video evidence of the affair. Claire tried to contest the divorce, but the courts denied her request. In the end, I walked away from the last 10 years of my life, leaving behind all the memories and dreams we had once shared. Since then, I have moved on with my life, though Claire remains a single mother, still living in the house we had bought together. I decided to take a larger portion of our savings to ensure that she could raise the baby in a stable environment. As for Claire's affair partner, he eventually faced consequences for his actions. Let's just say that he spent some time recovering in the hospital. Several months later, my life began to take shape again, though the scars of the past still lingered.